think, let me give you the statistics in terms of numbers so that you can get the impact. There are close to 1.6 billion students who are out of schools. That's more than 90% of enrolled students across the world. In almost about more than 160 countries, I believe that's the latest UNESCO report. So this is perhaps the single most educational disruption that has ever occurred in human history. I think, yes, well, of course, it's a rhetorical question, but I think it's a very, very important question. It's like I'm closely monitoring the situation. I'm sure you do the same. And anyone who's interested in what's going to happen should be keen on watching the situation at the moment. It's like something like the stock market. You know, the risk is never inbuilt. What do you call a pricing in? So similarly, educational systems, institutions across the world, there was no risk or resilience for education to be made sustainable, what the UNESCO calls, certainly were not built in. And henceforth, the impact of it when schools were asked to shut down was really collateral and colossal. As they say, commentators have said, the shock was aggregate. If I were to sort of really look at it in the context of India, this happened once before during the demonetization times. It was an aggregate shock. So something similar has happened now, but the magnitude is far wider. So preparedness, on the level of preparedness, I can talk about, there is basically content readiness. How ready are you with your content? Most of the education institutions have their curriculum ready. Are you technically prepared because the interface is different? Or technologically prepared? Are you pedagogically prepared? Right? And then are you sort of socially and emotionally prepared? So these are the levels of preparedness that we're talking about. Dubai, as you know, is the hub of, let's say, travel here. It basically is the linchpin and the connector between the West and, of course, the East. So everyone would concur Dubai was very vulnerable. But I think the authorities in the UAE forecast, they had a sense of what is coming. And I had written in my article in Gulf News, in fact, much before schools across Italy went on a complete lockdown, the authorities announced schools to be locked down in UAE. So that was a very far-sighted measure and the right measure, the appropriate measure. And all those people who were prepared in a sense, not completely though, like for example, I can talk about Manipal, our school of media and communication, and of course the other schools. We had a plan in place, but we were not sure whether it will work or not, but we had a plan in place. And once the lockdown was announced, we were all sort of restricted to our homes, and we sort of rolled out the plan to the students and started basically teaching remotely from our homes. Well, I can't say that for, I would say all the 160 or more or 190 countries where schools are shut and universities are shut. But I think fairly that's happening in economically developed countries. For example, I just was reading an article where the education minister in Armenia has very clearly negotiated with the telecom operators to making internet access free for students. So that was the initiative, and that's what the collaboration that I was talking about. So right now, I think all the tech giants have to come forward, have to come with actually open arms and make internet access free across the board. That's very important, particularly now where more than 1.6 billion people, I mean students, are out there isolated and restricted in their homes, trying to wonder where and how would I learn? Let's start from the bigger, sort of larger countries, like for example, India, for example, China. In fact, much as we hear about 5G and actually the backyard of all the manufacturing hub, China basically lags behind in offering, let's say, internet access, or for that matter, smartphones or computers to students. A large section of population in China, and of course in India, they don't have access to computers, leave alone having access to internet access. In fact, let me also say that they don't have access to quite a space, right? One of the key important things for students who are isolated in their homes to learn. So that's quite telling, and that's quite brutal. If you look at, in fact, all developed countries, if you look at the list by the OECD, for example, Norway, Switzerland, Lithuania, Poland, all the top countries who basically invest a lot of money in education to the tune of, let's say, 6.1 to 6.5%, New Zealand, of their GDP, they are quite well taken care. But what about countries like India, who spend an average of 1.3% of their GDP on education? Completely flawed in their policies, completely flawed in their whole idea of security. What happens to sub-Saharan countries, where basically children walk to their schools for their midday meals, for drinking water, or for that matter, toilet facilities. So their access is cut off. Very clearly, what the pandemic has exposed, among other things, is a very clear disparity between the rich and the poor, and also the kind of equity that that we see in front of our eyes between the rich and the poor. First of all education institutions have to revisit their policies because these are desperate times. These are extraordinary times, and we have to take extraordinary decisions, like we did on the institution, and I'm sure there are other institutions that followed, because this is in the best interest of our stakeholders, primarily our students. At no point in time we would want our students to be pressured. At no point in time, in fact, we want our parents to be pressurized. In fact, they are the caregivers, like teachers. So it's very important educational institutions relook at the policies. And when I say relook at the policies, what does that mean? They need to water down what they're going to teach. For example, if you have to cover 5 modules in a semester of 6 months, perhaps you may want to cover just 4 modules, right? Because the entire interface is different. You're staring at the screen. It's a war of attrition. and also offer, in fact, mental health support as well, like we have done in our sort of university here. Not just re-looking at the curriculum, we also need to re-look at how we're going to assess our students. Are we going to use the same measures? Are we going to use different measures? Can we be lenient, I would, for want of a better word, sort of in assessing our students? Can we think of innovative measures in creating our assignments? So I think we have to really calibrate our expectations. I mean, if you look at the brighter side, well, of this too shall pass, and students will get back to schools and students will get back to universities. But I'm sure there are takeaways from these crises. One is that you will build in risk into your educational system, right? You will build in best practices that you will acquire from various countries, how they've sort of dealt with the educational response, particularly during this COVID-19 outbreak. All said and done, in any university or school, you factor in only for about 20%, let's say, online or sort of blended learning. Otherwise, what is the whole point of going to an educational institution? I mean, in the times to come, at least in our lives, I would say that teaching is such a primarily and essentially human endeavor, right? And that will remain so in the years to come. Irrespective of all the technological changes, artificial intelligence that sort of come into our classrooms, you can enhance, you can embellish, you can facilitate a bit better, let's say, through online classes. But if you ask me whether a faculty member, an assistant professor, an associate, or a professor would sort of really like to teach the entire course online, I think the answer is very clear, no. And also, as our students have come and told us, sir, we want to get back to the class. In fact, some of the students said, well, I think we are isolated. It looks like in a jail. We're with my parents. I'm sort of quarreling with my parents. I'm quarreling with my siblings. When will the classes, when will we get back to the universities? So that's a great sign. Also a great sign, this is an indicator. In fact, I saw a tweet from a mom in New York. She just wrote on a tweet saying that I'm just done with 1 day of my homeschooling, and I'm very clear teachers should be paid more than investment bankers. And that says it all. I'm really pained to see students who don't have the access to the computers through internet, through an interface that we are doing right now. And I'm also pained at the fact that they will not even have internet access, perhaps, to see such videos, right? I think for that pain to end, governments across the world will have to seriously rethink on their policies. And the takeaway is very clear, that our very own idea of security, imagine US, their idea of security was basically building a big fleet of F-16s or F-22s. Right off that matter, India buying Rafale jets. Now here we are. We do not know who the enemy is. And you have invested in an entire fleet where you could do nothing, right? So I think leaders around the world, that includes all of us, educational leaders around the world, and of course, policymakers, people who are ruling at the moment and perhaps who have ruled earlier, politicians, policymakers, they have to rethink the idea of security, and education is an integral part of it. And the more you spend on education, and you're better off in particularly tackling a crisis like this. And I think, and also I would say in India, Kerala is a great example of actually investing in the right thing and in the right place.